and kind of talked about it a little bit. You know, we have in previous presentations, we've shown, you know, the floodplain, how it was before our project started and how it looks afterwards. So we do have images, and we are getting those from the design team right now, and we'll be sending those out to Mr. Callahan. I believe his property, part of it is showing in the floodplain now, and post our project, it will not. However, just to be clear, even post our project, we have to go through the official FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency processes to get that become official and, you know, for insurance purposes, be removed from the floodplain. So even though our project is addressing the floodplain, you know, we still have to go through all those official channels to make it official. So technically, it'll still continue to be in the floodplain until that letter of map revision is processed. But we are working on getting those images for Mr. Callahan.
Great, thank you, Christine. And at this time, any other members of the public that are online right now, you are able to speak up right now. If you'd like to voice your opinion, go ahead and unmute your mic. You can also type in the chat box. I'll just give everyone a couple of seconds. And again, thank you, Christine, for answering that question for Mr. Callahan. All right. I don't see anyone typing in the chat box. I don't think we have any other comments from the public at this time. All righty. So moving on, we will approve the minutes when we get more subcommittee members on, or next month. And then we'll get on into our presentations now. We have up Ms. Kristen Hansen with an operations and maintenance update for us. Go ahead, Kristen.
Good morning. Can you hear me, Monica? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Like Monica mentioned, I'll be giving our operations and maintenance update for San Pedro Creek. Two topics, our winter storm recap, of course, and a couple of maintenance updates that I have for you. Next slide. So overall, our vegetation throughout all of our sites, but obviously speaking specifically about San Pedro Creek, fared very well. The hardest hits vegetation were the esperanzas and our inland sea oats. And I have some photos here in a couple of seconds. I'll show you some of those photos. Staff after the freeze did trim everything down and ended up hand watering the entire site, which I'll get to the reason why in a second. But many of our plants are already starting to green up and also bud out. So if you've been on the site over the past week or so, you've probably already seen that. Next slide. So the photos on the left, we have Eve's necklace. You can see that it's already starting to bud out a little bit. And of course, on the right is a red bud. It's looking very pretty already. Next slide. There on the left, we have Esperanza and Little Blue Stem. The brown looking bush is the Esperanza that did freeze basically down to the root. But is starting to green up and will over the next month. They're not dead. They are okay, but they did take quite a hit from the freeze. And then the Little Blue Stem is the grass looking vegetation at the bottom. That was still dormant when the freeze came. So the freeze just is preventing them from greening up a little earlier than usual. But again, that will come back just fine as well. The photo on the right is a desert willow. Those will also start to green up soon. You can see they are looking a little frozen over or dead right now, but they are not. So we were very thankful for that for our desert willows. Next slide. Our autumn sage, you can see the freeze hit that really hard as well. You can see how brown it looks, but you can see one of our staff members kind of pulling it back. You can see the green already starting from the roots. So we're happy to see that. And then on the right, frog fruit, that's a native ground cover. And if you can look kind of closely, you can see some of the green starting to sprout up, and that will cover, if you're familiar, certainly many of us are with the project, that frog fruit covers a lot of our areas near the trees. So we were happy to see that as well. So overall, native vegetation can take a freeze and then typically does bounce back. And so we've been happy, like I mentioned, majority of our sites, that is what's happening. And the same thing goes on San Pedro Creek as well. Next slide. So I'll go into a little bit more of the winter weather update. Many of us experienced frozen pipes and cracked pipes, unfortunately. Our irrigation system did experience that. Staff, we did know it was coming, at least low temperatures, so we wrapped everything we could, but I think a lot of us weren't thinking that it was going to stay as cold as it did for as long as it did. So unfortunately, some of our irrigation lines throughout the site did crack and had to be repaired, but those were repaired within a couple of days of the team being back on site. The system itself, the brains of the operation, was also protected and covered, but just with the low temperatures, it was just too long for it to handle without being really protected in an enclosed building. So that system has been repaired, but we also had to wait for parts for about a week in order to repair that system. So that's when I mentioned earlier, staff was out there watering all of our vegetation by hand for that first week once it started to warm up. But like I said, it has been and working fine right now. Next slide. So moving on to maintenance updates, and I'll certainly take questions when at the end. Rains from Heaven, I've come to this committee a number of times talking about our Rains from Heaven and the algae and the pressure washing and the coating and this and that. We've determined with our engineering team along with the manufacturer that unfortunately the coating that that the team installed months ago is just not working. And so we're working with PPG is the name of the company to figure out the best and most environmentally safe way to remove that product. And we will take it back to just its original aluminum panels without a coating. We tried, but as you remember, I've come to the committee before and shown photos of the flaking off of that coating, and that's not what we want, obviously. So which kind of leads me into the next major algae. We're working with a company called Sonic Solutions, and they have equipment that you can put in certain areas of waterways or ponds, and it uses sonic waves to help prevent the growth of algae. So the team took a water/algae sample and sent it away to this company a while back, and we're just waiting for the results in hopes that whatever type of algae we have, because we think we have a couple different types of algae, not just one, that this equipment will help prevent that growth. And so obviously it's a chain reaction. If we prevents the growth, we won't have as much in the trough, we won't have as much on the Rains from Heaven, and we won't have to pressure wash it as well. So like I mentioned, it's a little bit of a chain reaction. That is our next, since the panel coating wasn't working, we were moving into the Sonic Solutions in hopes that we can get a couple of systems out on site in the next few weeks, and I'll be able to come back to the once we know if it worked or if it didn't and what our next step would be. I believe that's all I had. Are there any questions on the patient or anything? Oh, that was a bird that the guy saw out on site. So are there any questions from the committee?
All right, any questions from subcommittee members?
Kristen.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any photos of the creek with the snow and ice on it?
Not in my presentation. I can check with the team to see if they do.
Okay.
But if they do, I can send it to Monica and she can send it out to the committee members. We have photos of some of the sites, but I don't know if we have one of San Pedro Creek with the snow on the creek. But I'll look.
Okay. It's just for the archives. I mean, really.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Since this is considered a biggie.
Yes.
Every 10 years or more, strictly for archival things. And
Sure.
we'll just see what it looks like.
Okay.
If this happens every 2 years, and that's another story.
Yes. I hope it doesn't happen every 2 years. Not here.
Me too. Okay, well, good. Well, thank you very much. And from my perspective,
You're welcome.
you guys doing a super job as always, trying to keep all this stuff under control. And due to the complexity of the project, the things you have to do with the interim
Yes.
parts of the project during these phases is so important too. So
Yes.
it'll all be more routine someday, I think. And especially when you get all the ground covers and all the different plants into the phases where they're more mature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the guys the guys and girls do a great job on site. So I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Yes, please do, because we are very appreciative. People don't get to go down there right now and enjoy the site that much, but when we're back to a different rhythm, whatever that rhythm is,
Mm-hmm.
you see more and more people downtown, especially when UTSA builds out more.
Yes, I agree.
You know, it's gonna become what we envision. So thank you very much. You're very
welcome.
important.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other subcommittee members have comments or questions for Kristen regarding the operations and maintenance? All right, and if not, members of the public are welcome to ask questions and comment at this time as well. Just remember, you can unmute your mic and go ahead and speak up or type your question in the chat box. All right, and while we're waiting for that, I noticed that we had Ms. Deb Bolner Pro jump on the meeting, and so we do have a quorum, and we are able to approve the minutes for February. So if I could get a motion and a second from subcommittee members, we can take care of that right now.
Motion.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Lourdes. Anyone second?
I'll second.
Listen, thank you. Alrighty, the minutes have been approved, and I don't see any comments or questions from subcommittee members or members of the public at this time, and we will move right on to our next presentation. Okay, so now we have design and construction activity with Ms. Christine Clayton. Go ahead, Christine.
Good morning, everyone. So I have a few more updates on the open park. As you can see in the photo here, the Monontiel, we'd had a while back some issues with the tile. It had been removed and we had painted it blue temporarily. Fortunately, we have been able to get all new tile fabricated and it has been shipped and we have received that. So now Sun has been out there prepping the surface. They removed that blue paint and we are expecting now to start installation of the new tile next week. So and also you can see we've done the first application of the blue thin coat on the bench tops. They're going to be reapplying another coat. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks, we're expecting to have the Monontiel completely redone and looking beautiful. So we're excited about that. It's also, we'd had some issues within the pump pit, the trash screens. There have been some damage. There was a wall inside the pump pit that failed and caused the damage to the screen. So HDR has been working on analyzing what the failure could have been caused by and how we could repair it. So they're currently working on some options on repairs. So once we have an update on that, we will let you all know. Now that the Cameron Street work has started, the portion that Sun is doing on the road work is expected to start here in April. As that work gets started, we're also planning on going in and doing some rework of the vegetated swales along San Pedro and Cameron Street. So Sun is working on getting us some updated pricing for that work, and that way we can factor it all in while Sun's out there on Cameron Street. Next slide, please. So an update on phase 1.2 construction. Here at the end of March in the gardens area, which you see in the photo, they'll be installing railing. But the biggest thing that has been going on with 1.2 right now is on Houston Street. The sidewalks and the planters are complete, and they will have the pavement on the bridge deck grooved and finished up here next week. They're working on the southern CDS for the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then once all that's done, then Houston Street will be essentially complete. They're also working on the channel tie-in underneath Houston Street and getting all that worked out. I should note that even though Houston Street is expected to be complete here in the next month or two, the closure will be extended due to the work that will come from the archaeological site once we're given the approval to proceed. Next slide, please. And as Monica mentioned earlier, our public notice for the archaeological site ended this Monday. We're still working on compiling all the submissions through the website. Monica's working with our website team to pull that information. She also mentioned we're meeting with the Corps next week to discuss all the comments, both that were pulled from the website and that also went directly to the Corps. And then from our meeting with the agencies last week, we discussed the next steps now that the public comment period has ended. And once all the comments have been compiled, the agencies will review them, and the Corps of Engineers is expected to give us a final decision on what we can proceed with by the end of March. Following that is the next phase, which is the mitigation plan. So our team will work on putting together a plan that essentially details all of the steps that we're going to take moving forward, both in the preservation of what remains, if anything is to be removed, how do we document that, and how do we go about constructing whatever we're allowed to construct, and how we preserve what stays there, and how do we kind of work around all those features. So that's in the works right now. Our team is getting a jump start on that and putting together an outline of what we may need to start investigating for that report. So as of right now, we're still all kind of waiting to see what that decision is, but hopefully by the end of March, we should have direction on that. Next slide, please. Moving on to phase 1.3 and phase 2. A lot of great progress being made in these two phases. Phase 1.3 from Graham to Cesar Chavez, particularly from Graham Street to Cesar Chavez. They're working on that channel pier caps. They've done all the drill shafts for the retaining walls, for the channel walls, and now they're working on some of those final pieces. In phase 2, a lot of work going on in Guadalupe. We have another CDS unit that's being installed right now, and from Guadalupe to camp. About for 2 more months, there'll be a lot of the limestone blocks that you see throughout the park. They'll be working on that, and there's quite a bit going on between those 2 blocks. There's a lot of walls, so that's why it'll still be a couple of months for that work. On Camp Street, we also have quite a bit of work going on. We just completed the sanitary sewer siphon, and now we're going in installing also another CDS unit. CPS is also doing work in that area. If you all recall, there is a transmission tower right in front of Ruby City that is being relocated to north of Camp Street. There's also another transmission tower near the substation that's getting relocated. So a lot of that work is going on now that we've completed our siphon work. They can come in and do that. So within the next couple of weeks, they'll be kind of wrapping up some of that utility work and moving forward with Camp Street. Next slide, please. So making good progress on phase 3 and 4 as well. The design team is moving forward with design. The 60% designs are expected at the end of April, so that's coming up here fairly quick. We've also been coordinating with the Union Pacific, and HDR is working on the bridge design. We expect to have our first submittal to Union Pacific in about 2 to 3 weeks. That'll kick off our review process with Union Pacific, and that's where we kind of work out some of the details on the construction and how we incorporate that into the design, and we hopefully will get a better sense of the timeline. Each review by Union Pacific takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. They're allotted that time. So, our goal is to try and minimize as much as possible the iterations of design review and comment. So our first one is going in here in 3 weeks. We're also, a big piece of phase 3 is the overlap with the West Side Creek study that was done a few years ago. So we're really putting a lot of effort into putting together a plan that incorporates a lot of those elements of West Side Creeks into phase 3. So the team is working on putting that together. There's some elements that will be part of our design, and we're also looking at, what additional features can we incorporate. So we're working on that right now. We received this week the updated real estate needs from the design team. Now that we've gotten a little further along in design, we have a better sense of what property we're going to be needing for both phase 3 and phase 4. Now that we've received those needs, we are reaching out to the property owners and sending those to them to get some of those real estate transactions started. We have met with quite a few property owners already. We've gotten some positive feedback, and we're just going to continue that process in acquiring the property that we need. So looking forward to moving forward with the final two designs of San Pedro. Just kind of a quick update on the last construction schedule that I received. The substantial or final completion for phase 2 is expected April of 2023. As of right now, our goal is to have phase 3 and 4 completed within the same time frame. So, we still a little ways out, but we're nearing towards the end of San Pedro now, within the last 2 to 3 years. Exciting to see this project, coming together and all the pieces falling into place. Phase 1.2, as of right now, we have an estimate of a final completion of July of 2022, but that really depends on us getting the decision by the Corps by the end of March, and what that decision is. Different designs require different options that were presented, have different level of redesign that needs to be accommodated. So that will obviously impact our schedule. But as of right now, our estimate is the middle of 2022. So we'll keep you posted on that as the 106 process develops. Next slide, please. I believe that is the end of my portion. Does anyone have any questions?
Great. Any questions from subcommittee members? Questions, comments?
Hello, this is Lourdes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, my question is, that under the bridge, how long is that stretch right under by the railroad tracks? Are we talking like half a mile? Are we talking like few feet? How long is that?
Yes. So for phase 3, I want to say, I don't know off the top of my head. Do you mean from Alamo to the railroad bridge, or from the railroad bridge down to Elizon?
Well, both.
So phase 2, I don't have that off the top of my head, but can probably pull something up for you here really quick. I want to say it's less than half a mile.
Okay. Sounds about right. Okay. Yeah. Well, that improvement is gonna be, I know, really great, and it's needed so much. But I look forward to that. I was wondering what the stretch was. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I had a question. This is Janelle Garcia. How are y'all? The motel rather on Ceballos, right under the bridge of 35. I realize that's the extension of the San Pedro Creek. It brings a lot of just kind of foot traffic from the homeless and people. When we put gas, people look like they're suspicious, right? As far as dealing at the hotel. And is that hotel one of the businesses that would be contacted for real estate for that section?
Yes, ma'am. There's not a lot that we're needing from that particular property at that stretch. Most of our actual walkway is further within the creek. I think really what we need from them is really just access down into the creek.
Okay, thank you.
Christine?
Yes, sir.
Refresh my memory, please. What kind of formal plans do we have in being or in progress with the rest of the West Side Creeks? Do we have a series of project plans that all of us can look at as we're moving through those? Because we've checked on progress before, and in some cases we're kind of finished with the projects that were tied to the greenways, to the peak walkways and greenways things. So what do we have follow-on projects for each one of those creeks that are written down?
Hey, Carrie, are you still on the line? Mr. Kerry Averett has been working particularly on that. They've been looking at all the creeks in general, kind of as a separate program from San Pedro. Within San Pedro, we're looking at it from our phase 3, which overlaps, and what we can do to accommodate that. I know Kerry's been working on putting together a plan for how we can start working on some of these other creeks. I don't have a lot of details on that, but he can certainly provide an update on that next time.
Yeah,
Okay.
next month we can do an update on West Side Creeks, but also an update on the linear creekways. I know we had talked about
Yes,
that last time, but we'll be able to address that for April.
that's good, because I don't know how many of our subcommittee members have ever received a copy of or accessed the original West Side Creek conceptual document that came out in 2011 timeframe, which was the predecessor to these various projects. And then from those conceptual works that came from focus groups and teams and that sort of stuff at that time, that generated emphasis on the Apache Creek work and Elmendorf Lake work, and it generated the emphasis on the San Pedro. And then we also were able, through a lot of coordination and support, we're able to plug into the Greenways projects. And remember going down to those meetings and making presentations, asking for our creeks to become part of not only their projects to get that 1/8% sales tax portion, but to be advanced in priority, so that we weren't tacked on to the tail end of a 20-year project or something. So I was curious, when you said that we're aligning in this specific case, aligning the Alazan and the San Pedro where they intersect and so forth, I was just curious as to what still was in mind for the Alazan. So we'll see that next month, and it'll give us a better idea of how this stuff's all going to fit together. I think you pointed out something very important for all of us to remember, is that the railroad operates on railroad time and railroad priorities and railroad stuff. Railroads still enjoy a fairly high priority in the transportation business. And so working with them on the replacement of the bridge for us may be a big priority and time-wise, but it may not be the same priority from their point of view. And you've also pointed out, but I want to emphasize again, that when we jointly remove that bridge, there's going to have to be an alternate, because train traffic still has to, some of it maybe can be rerouted around the edge of the area, but some of it's not. So there'd be an alternative temporary bridge. And when you think about how heavy that stuff is and how much pressure and everything there is, that's not a trivial task. So we were in for a longer haul. And so we're doing, everything's going pretty good then, Christine, other than and I know that you've told us that the Army Corps of Engineers is committed to doing things as quickly as they can turn things around on the AME project. So I think we can be hopeful that it's not going to be a major setback for us. A good solution will come out. I also want to thank the subcommittee members, all of you. We had really good turnout on our request for the subcommittee members to go online and participate in the special survey that we held. And Monica pulled that all together. I hope all of you saw the results, so you know what came out of it. So we had the good turnout, and we were given the opportunity, invited by the Corps of Engineers, to participate. And I think that was just great to be able to play our role the way we can. So thank you also on that. And Christine and Monica, thank you for the effort that took to get that done expeditiously, right down to the wire on Monday, March the 8th.
Thank you. And Jerry, you also brought up a good point about the documents and some of the studies for Westside Creeks on our website under the Learn tab. We do have a couple of reports there, but I think now is a really good time to reassess that and make sure that all those other studies and documents that you were talking about are there, and the public and subcommittee members have access to that as well. So we'll take a look at that and make sure everything is kind of updated and we have everything on there. Thank you for that.
And I've also posted in the chat box, the Corps of Engineers on their website has the previous Westside Creek study. I know it's a kind of a long document, but I put that website in the chat box if anyone wants to look through that.
Right, and there were, I'm not an expert on this because as soon as we peeled off, so to speak, from the Westside Creek's main subjects, we began to focus on the San Pedro. So I personally have not been able to focus on the whole program. I think maybe Lourdes and Deb and some others have been able to see the whole program better. But there is a distinction in that when we studied the Westside Creeks and did the conceptual work, that was one thing, and it was an incubation kind of a thing too, that an incubator that got people thinking and trying to figure out how could we get some money behind this or get some oomph behind it. And then the second part of it was linking to the Greenways program. And then the third part of it was the Corps of Engineers was conducting an environmental study, which had to do with flora and fauna and all sorts of stuff. And so for a while, I kind of followed that, but they were even chronicling the return of wildlife to anything that was improved, including that small little creek extension that Rod Radel had sponsored. It's off of West Commerce back down in there. So and so there was all sort of like, as soon as you did that, or as soon as we did that, cleaned it up a little bit and did something, wow, wildlife started coming back. And so it was a great testimony to what can be done for the West Side with not nearly as much difficulty as we did on the San Pedro. But from a personal point of view, I hope that someday the Westside Creeks are all San Pedros, in that our community made the commitment to make those amenities there to improve the communities that were separated back in the days when the creeks were channelized. So that's why I'm interested in it too, is it takes a whole community to get behind these things, and everybody needs to get their part of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerry. All right, any other subcommittee members have questions or comments for Ms. Christine at this moment?
Let me, hello, this is Lourdes.
Mhm.
Mr. Jerry, this is Lourdes. The subcommittee for the Westside Creeks, when you're talking about the other creeks, they're meeting quarterly, every 3 months, because they're actually not that much going on, but there are spurts of different areas that have gotten some trailways and walkways. But we are working right now to try to get more funding, and we're working with the Corps of Engineers, and that's the latest update. But not too much action for beautification, but the trailways are being set up.
Well, that's a demonstration item. It's a catalyst. Once you get that activity down there, not only for the flora and fauna, but you get it down there with the people, then it starts to show its potential. And with the San Pedro, if you go back and look at the conceptual document, we were only going to have a very short stretch on the San Pedro. And there were even parts of it that were recommended that were going to be paved over with underground culverts and stuff. So over time, as people begin to study it more and think about it, then the sponsors realized that there was much more available than appeared to be. And so I think that, Lourdes, people like you who have committed a great deal of your life to the support of the community there, that you and others will be able to build the support and build the stakeholders to get the momentum, the oomph to get this stuff done. So it builds on each other. So what you're doing right now is a catalyst.
Thank you. We're moving forward. There have been quite a few questions about when are they going to finish, but we need to put the money behind it, the funding behind it, and that's what we're kind of pushing for. We hope to see, hopefully by next year, we'll get some more people out in those areas. We do have a lot of walk trails, but we're still a ways to go. But I know that the community is interested, and we're going to stay on top of it. And we appreciate anybody that wants to join us at our meetings on the West Side Creeks. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, I know that Commissioner Rodriguez has spoken out on it, like time to turn now, because it's in his precinct. It's time to turn now towards the other West Side Creeks. That's come up a number of times. So that's what you need. You get that oomph in there.
We have met, and he knows our concern. And I told him that we needed his assistance to help us focus on that area as fast as we can. And he's also going to be behind us in trying to find the funding that we need to finish up and beautify that whole area. It's a beautiful area. It just needs to be beautified. Thank you.
Gary, this is Dave Graham with the River Authority. When we give you that maybe brief and a future date on the overall West Side plan, we can talk to you also about our strategy with the Corps of Engineers to get that funded. The last number of years, we've really pushed for reimbursement on the mission reach, but now our full attention, 100% of it, is getting funding for that West Side Creeks. It's a $100 million initiative. The federal government would pay about 65%. The plan would be for Bexar County through the Rivers and Creeks program, phase 3 of San Pedro Creek, to be a good chunk of the money that's used as match. We are kind of doing a full court press politically with the Corps to fund that West Side Creeks program. And so we can brief on all that at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks for reminding us. You have mentioned that before, and it completely slipped my mind just now, but you are right. The River Authority also has not just recently, but began to put more emphasis and thought into where we're going to go with the other creeks. So I have full confidence it's going to happen.
What Ms. Galvan is saying is true. She's calling it beautification. I guess the technical Corps E's term would be ecosystem restoration. So yeah, I mean, right now we have trails, but not along anything very beautiful. And so the Corps' restoration program would help change that, make it ecologically a higher lift and visually be much more beautiful.
Good, thank you. Okay, Monica, you lost us there. Now you can take over.
All right, thanks everyone. Now we'll move on to Miss Carrie Brown's public art update. Go ahead, Carrie.
All right, good morning, everyone. I've just got a few updates for you today. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about the call to artists for the 5-panel mural. I know I mentioned it at our meeting last month that requests for qualifications did go out on February 24th. The deadline to apply is March 24th. So I've been working with Taylor to get the word out. We've been doing a lot of calling and posting and emailing, but certainly would ask for your help in spreading the word as well. And if you need any more detailed information, you can reach out to me. The applications are submitted through publicartist.org, which is the online system that we've been using for all of our calls. And we are requesting that artists apply as teams. We've had a few questions about whether or not all of those team members need to reside in Bexar County. And so the statement we've given is that the lead artist, the person that would apply to the call, needs to reside in Bexar County, but all of the team members do not need to reside in Bexar County. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. But again, just wanted to reiterate that we are requesting artists to apply as teams this go around. So again, March 24th is the deadline. Please help spread the word. And if you need any information about that, just feel free to reach out to me. Next slide. And I wanted to give you an update on the repair work that's happening at the Joe Lopez mural. The image you see on the right here is showing the work being done to remove the damaged tiles. As we were doing that, we did notice some additional issues that were troubling. And so what we did was take a full assessment of all the murals. We did see some similar issues throughout each of the murals. And so we documented that, and now we're in the process of getting bids to do work to do the repair. So the image that you see in the middle, you kind of see the cracking and that center line, that's actually an expansion joint. And so what we discovered is this is an area where water can get in and potentially causing some of the other issues that we had noticed previously and that we're managing and taking care of. But finding things like this, you know, that takes a little bit closer look and a little bit more fine inspection actually was a good thing. And we can make all of these repairs and get everything kind of in good shape and working order again. And then now we are more mindful to look out for that going forward. And I just want to say too, you know, discovering these things wasn't you know, an issue of neglect or, you know, maintenance that wasn't happening. We were doing all the right things. We just, upon closer inspection with these damaged tiles, we found some more fine details. And I personally think it's a good thing we found them so that we can kind of nip it in the bud and get it right, so that going forward we won't have any of the issues that we have been seeing. So long story short, you know, we've got it marked and documented, and we're working on a plan going forward to make all of the necessary repairs. With the tile murals themselves, it does take about 4 to 6 weeks to get those reproduced. So it'll be probably a couple of months before all of the work is done, but I'll certainly keep you all posted as we progress with that work. Next slide. And then I just wanted to give you an update on our upcoming events. Of course, they're all virtual, and we are airing them now through our YouTube channel. They are still posted on our social media channels as well, but the actual videos air on YouTube now. And just a quick note about our Monday night yoga classes. With all of the construction that is happening on Cameron Street, we've actually been filming those classes at Art Pace right now. And so that's been a really fun partnership. They've been really gracious to us to allow us to use their space. And I'm working with Taylor to secure some other locations as well to highlight some of these great assets we have all along the creek. So look out for those videos from different locations as well as we move forward in the next couple of months with yoga. And then this Saturday, we have our next episode of Fit and Flow. This is with the YMCA of San Antonio. I keep doing that because I've done so much work with the YMCA of Boston. Anyways, we will be having some really great giveaways as part of this Fit and Flow episode. So you'll just need to engage with the video online, and you'll be entered to win a family membership. So we're really gracious to the Y for being a partner and supporting those sponsorships for us. And then coming up a little bit later in the month is World Water Day. This will be a scavenger hunt that we're doing in partnership with the River Foundation. We will also have some giveaways as part of that scavenger hunt as well. So again, just stay tuned and participate. And then coming up in April, we'll have our next episode of Get Creative. This will feature Aztec dancers. You may recall we had this group at a loom a couple of years ago. So really excited to see them, get to know a little bit more about their work. And then of course, in the middle of May, we're working on Creek Fest. And again, that will be virtual, and next month I'll have some more details to present to you about what all of that will entail. And I believe that's all I've got, Monica. Happy to answer any questions that y'all might have.
Thank you, Carrie. Any questions from our subcommittee members about programming or public art call to artists?
I've got a couple of them then while y'all are thinking. Miss Carrie Brown. So,
Yes.
So time-wise, we've discussed this periodically. so far you think you're still going to be okay with time-wise on the 5-panel art project? You still have enough time to go through everything correctly and then not force anything to happen that shouldn't be forced, so to speak, and you still finish about the time because of what's happening with AME Church and the rest of it, so we'd have a little extra time, I guess, before water's going to be in there. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, and that's what we're working on. Of course, you know, we absolutely don't want to force anything, and if we need to take more time with the artwork, we certainly will do that. But that being said, it's right now we're working on a schedule that still fits within the overall construction schedule, and that is our goal.
Okay. Staying with that project and related to it, which is okay, good thing. Your request for I can't remember what you said, qualifications or information or what, but the request that went out, is that now on our website where we can read the text of what was sent out to prospective artists or artists to bid on or so forth?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we have it posted on our website, to be honest with you. I can double check with Nicole on that, and if it's not, we can get that up there very quickly. But we do have it posted on publicartist.org, and that's where you can read the full detailed request for qualifications with all of the information that you need to apply.
Well, it helps us, and it's good, committee members, it's good for us to do that because it helps us understand what the parameters are to start with that people are looking at. And remember, one of our major things about the subcommittee is that if not setting expectations, understanding the expectations that are set, and that allows us then to measure how we're doing progress-wise. So that's good. And then on the third one is, I probably missed this because I was not being attentive. Whatever happened with the interpretive plan? Do we have a copy of it online now as it's finished? And did we publish it as a document, or I mean as a physical document, or is it only electronic? What finally came of that? The last time I recall much about it was back in the fall sometime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do have that document finalized. It's not yet posted on our website. As Monica has mentioned, we're doing kind of a big website overhaul, and it will be included. It's not up there right now, but it's certainly available to share. I don't know, Monica, if you want to touch on maybe the best way to do that, to get that out to the subcommittee.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are going to be printing copies for the interpretive plan committee members, and we can also print copies for subcommittee as well, and we'll send those out. But we can get it uploaded now under the Learn tab, and we'll also include it when we do our big website update as well. So, yes.
Okay. I don't think there's going to be any great surprises in it, but I am, from my perspective, having been Rosemary and I and Marty Tamez and a number of people working on the interpretive plan from way back in the first iteration of the interpretive plan, the first generation when we were meeting at Munoz and Company. It would be interesting to see how it evolved once we brought Ann Toxie in and so forth to, to formalize it in interpretive plan talk. So, and it is important because it does guide the things, and it would certainly be important when we have other opportunities for art history and so forth down the creek where there may be a blank canvas right now, and then working with the foundation or some other source, we would be able to add some things later on, and that's it. So that's why it's important to us. Okay, the third one is we're talking about the Joe Lopez mural. I agree with you that it was fortuitous, actually, that we find something like those expansion joints having some cracks in them as far as the grout and things like that. I think it's really good because it keeps us from having some other kind of a problem later where we walk in one morning and 27 tiles have popped off, that sort of thing. And so it's always good. Everything expands, contracts, and it deals with heat and cold and moisture. So I think it's excellent that that's happened. You and I and Monica talked about this earlier, and with Christine on the side, and that is how much of that mural is subject to being covered with water when we have a flood event, a significant flood event. Can you and Christine, tell us that, please?
Yeah, so the Joe Lopez mural, because of where it is situated, to my knowledge, doesn't really get affected, doesn't go underwater when we have flooding events. Now, that being said, if we had a very major one, that's a different story. But the ones we've seen so far, because that mural is slightly higher, it does not go underwater like, say, for example, the Katie Pell murals that are situated much lower and do go underwater when there is a flooding event.
Right. How about the Adriana mural? Does it ever, is it low enough, the bottom half of it or bottom quarter or something like that, under what we would consider a reasonable surface runoff event downtown?
Yeah, that one does go a little bit lower. Again, to my knowledge, I don't think we've had an event that's hit that one because it is a little bit higher, but it is lower than both the Lopez mural and the Rubio mural. So that definitely has the potential to go underwater as well. But that being said, you know, a portion of the Katie Pell murals are consistently underwater. And there's no issues there in terms of, you know, that affecting the mural tiles or in the integrity of the wall or anything. So that's a really good sign that everything's holding up. It was just these sort of, you know, finer cracks and, you know, minor details that we were seeing that kind of lead to long-term damage over a long period of time. Yeah.
Okay, well, good, because we have to expect that. But as you know, there are tile murals from the 1940s on the San Antonio River that probably are not inundated. I'm not an expert on how much water goes into there because of the extensive work that's been done with the gates, floodgates, and all that sort of stuff. But and they've held up all those years, and they're all old-fashioned, completely the old-fashioned methods, and sometimes the older materials are surprisingly better than the modern ones. That's just the way it is, certainly in the way of masonry material. So thank you. Does anybody else have any questions about Ms. Carrie Brown's outstanding program?
Jerry, I had a comment. This is Deb.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just, it seems after sitting in these meetings, you know, for the last several years and listening to a lot of the various problems that we've had, from the rain of the heavens to the tiles on the benches to now the Jose Lopez deal, are we either not using the right materials to start with? Are we not allocating enough funds to have the highest quality construction that will last? Or are we not allocating, for example, I know with the Library Foundation, when like the Chihuly exhibit that we had put in at the main library, we had, you know, donors that when we put in an art installation, we also have a annual you know, maintenance fund. I know that, you know, you have wear and tear and you have weather, and I know that things contract and expand and all of that, but there's elastomeric, I mean, there's materials, just like with our homes, we have to maintain them every year. It seems like we have a lot of issues that it seems like there's more than there needs to be. And so it's just, I'm just putting it out there. If we're not maintaining stuff, if we're not, you know, you have to use the quality construction materials to begin with, then there should be annual maintenance. I mean, look at the River Foundation art exhibits and installations along the museum reach. They need maintenance. I mean, they don't work, and they're not maintaining them. And that's been something that I've talked to them about. So, I mean, everything needs to be maintained, but it seems that and maybe I'm wrong, But it just seems to me that there's a lot of issues that we have to deal with, that, you know, we're either not using the materials up front, or there's not an annual maintenance going on or something. So I'm just throwing that out there.
No, I think that's a really good point, Deb. And, you know, we're certainly mindful of that. We have been doing our annual inspections, and, you know, I know the guys are taking really good care of the work. A lot of what we saw with the murals is stuff that just happens over time. It's to be expected. It was maybe sooner than we thought we would see that kind of stuff. But on top of that, there are some design details that, in retrospect, we're kind of learning as we go. And so making note of all of those things going forward, so that we're setting ourselves up for success, you know, with future art projects. But I would say, you know, relatively speaking, what we are seeing with the murals, you know, isn't any sort of major failure, but being, you know, on top of those things and making those corrections as we need to in a timely fashion will, you know, help going down the road. But certainly, you know, marking all of that for lessons learned going forward.
Well, so that's my point, is that as we're entering this, you know, these new phases, and we are assigning these RFPs and we are contracting with these folks, you know, do we have lessons learned? I mean, even like the LED lights that we had put in didn't really work right, you know, in the water. And, you know, that's a whole different perspective, having, you know, making electricity work properly underwater for long periods of time. So, you know, are we being too ambitious in some of these things? Do we need to throttle back and really have something that we know is going to work? I mean, I don't know where the budget's coming to, or how we're balancing our budgets with new construction and having to fix all this stuff. And I know some of it's insurance, and, you know, but you know, I think we just need to be cognizant of that.
No, you're right, Deb. I think in some of it, in retrospect, some of the materials that were chosen in the first part of the creek were poor choices, and choices that, you know, that we discovered pretty quickly that they were not going to meet our durability expectations. And some of them were those tiles that are being replaced up in the front that Christine talked about earlier, and Carrie's talked about. It was the wrong tile, wrong kind of tile process, the wrong kind of process for the application. And I think that came out pretty fast. And it just came from the original, the choices made originally by the design team at that time. How about that? How about I say it that way? So what we hope is that we don't do that again. And I think maybe that's one of your main points, is that every time we run across something that seems to be an issue for us, we wouldn't do that again. And so when we get to the actual materials that are going to be used on the 5-panel murals beneath the wall that's down there below the governor's palace, which is subject to being inundated, you know, considerably, I guess it could be, then we better be darn sure that everything we've learned about materials is applied to the materials that are sought. Once those artists come up with the design solutions, you know, and it really looks neat and everybody loves what they're going to do, then obviously we got to be sure that the materials that are used are we're benefited from what we've learned with the problems in the past. And even things like the coatings and not the coatings, that's I guess from what I've been told by operations and by engineering team and everything, is that's a range from heaven problem. It's a problem that was kind of anticipated, but it's turned out to be much more of a problem than we thought. You know, it keeps coming back, and it's got something to do with the materials, but so far they haven't found the material on the market anywhere that is optimized for that kind of situation. When we're dealing with bacteria and mold and algae and whatever, and water. So I don't know what the solution there is, or whether there is an application in the United States somewhere that's we just haven't found yet. But your point is extremely well taken. So if we can make sure that we don't make the same mistakes over and over again, or if they're not mistakes, they're processes of learning processes. And the second thing is, again, going back to the West Side Creeks, you know, we would hope that anything we learn from maintenance and replacement on the river, Museum Reach, and on the creek, San Pedro Creek, would not be, the problem would not be replicated on the West Side Creeks, I'm hoping. That's a very good point. Does anything like that ever come up on the in the board meetings?
No, we get into those type of drill down details. I mean, they really, you know, that's the purpose of this committee. But you know, Lourdes and I do report when needed, because we get updates. Some of these same PowerPoints that we're looking at in our meeting here are shown in the operations committee and also at the board meeting. So, but we don't go into all the drill down on all these types of problems and stuff.
Well, yeah, you know, it's considerable. Now the cost, and I see Steve wants to weigh in here in a second. The cost of these amenities on San Pedro Creek relative to the overall construction costs and the flood control and the rest of it, and all the, you know, heavy duty construction is very minor. But in terms of dollars that the public contributes to at the federal level and our level, it's not minor. You know, it's a lot of money. And also we expect to get what we ask for. So I think you're on target, and I think it's a key element. Mr. Steve Graham.
Well, I was just going to add that, you know, clearly we're learning a little bit. Maybe the construction would have been done a little bit better. We might not have had the problems, but the good side of this, it's not unusual to have warranty issues on projects, especially of this magnitude. And the good news is Sunk is an excellent contractor. They're out there. It's kind of this team effort with Sunk and Sarah, where they're going to fix these things. So the good news is, you know, warranty or fixing things that didn't quite work the way we wanted has been able to work well on this project. Now, you guys on this committee get to see all the nitty-gritty details of working it out. The general public doesn't. But this project is a solid project. Please don't have that concern. We are working it out so that we will have these art pieces will be stable and secure for decades to come. So we believe these are minor issues that are getting resolved. We share every little detail with you, but I personally don't have concern. Warranty and things like this are very typical on these construction projects.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions or comments from subcommittee members or members of the public at this point? All right. I do have a couple of pictures that Kristen sent me of the freeze on San Pedro Creek. I thought maybe we could share those real quick. Let me just pause my screen here and pull those up. Yeah, they are pretty interesting. So here we have the so we've got right here the plaza area. It looks like it's pretty frozen over. And then here we have the Manantial.
Those are the floating islands that we have, obviously in the creek, and you can see, obviously the snow likes certain areas and it sticks on certain areas and melts a little faster. But yeah, the plaza itself on the left, it was pretty frozen over. And then I'm not sure if you want to go down a little bit, Monica. there you go, Jerry, on the right there. We have the date and everything written in the snow for us. So for our archives, but yes, so I thought we would
good.
just didn't have any PowerPoint. So thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad that they were able to get these over to me.
Yeah. As old as I am, you know, we have boxes of old photographs from the 1930s when we had this kind of thing, and people were taking pictures of Breckenridge Park and at the sunken gardens and stuff like that in those days. So it's a milestone, and it's great to see that, even though we know it doesn't stick under all conditions. And the creek is kind of protected in a way that it wouldn't be, say, out in some of the suburban areas where we are. But anyway, you've got it, and that's great.
Yeah. So we do have them. Thank you, Monica, for sharing that.
Thank you. Alrighty. So we will move right on then to calendar items, everyone. Carrie Brown mentioned earlier that Fit and Flow is happening on March 13th. And then we do Monday night yoga on March 15th, 22nd, and the 29th. And then the 20th through the 21st is World Water Day, where she mentioned that we are doing that scavenger hunt with the San Antonio River Foundation. Oops. And then lastly, we've got our next subcommittee meeting coming up on April 8th. And I realize we are just a little early today. This is all we have. This concludes our presentations. Are there any other comments, questions, last chance from subcommittee members or the public at this time?
Is Tony Cañas on with us today?
I don't see him on. I think he was on a little bit earlier and he probably jumped off.
Can anybody tell me what's going on with the demolition of the jail? We're mid-March, was supposed to be a milestone. Has anybody seen it in the last day or two?
Yeah. So yes, sir. So we haven't gotten a specific date yet. I know the last little piece that's standing, they're kind of wrapping up that little piece, and then there'll be a little more work just to finish the cleanup. So that has taken a little bit, and I think they still have at least a few more weeks on that, but we haven't gotten a date yet.
Okay, the last time I talked to him outside of this committee area, the goal was to have the demolition part of it, that last piece of the tower, down around mid-March, but then all the rest of the cleanup and the site mitigation, whatever, wouldn't be finished and ready for the handoff to UTSA until mid-July. So I was just curious. I'd seen some photographs of it taken before the freeze and everything, and so there was still some really pretty ones, by the way. If you're interested in demolition, because we have pictures of that area when those towers were built, and now from exactly the same angle, there's some pictures of them when the towers are gone. So that's kind of neat. But I was curious about that because that's just part of the whole thing. And then from the creek perspective, we're going to see, I'm sure, that UTSA, as soon as they take possession of that land, I'm guessing they're going to use it as a staging area for stuff that they need for building the cyber building across the creek from us. So things down there will stay congested for whatever time it takes to do all these things. Christine, along that line, do you have, will you be needing any of that block of Laredo Street, that 200 block, to continue any staging for our creek construction that's still going on?
Yes, sir. So we've already talked to Tony about it. You know, we've heard the similar timeline of transferring that property to UTSA in the summer of this year. We've already brought it up to Bexar County that we'd like to work with them and UTSA to try to allow us a little longer on that site. You know, once they take it over, I'm sure there's a lot of due diligence, investigations, and work that they have to do on their end before any work on the site begins. So we're working with them to try and come up with a plan that'll help us all out. We're looking for alternative areas. There's not a lot available, but we are also looking at potentially the parking lot near there. But yes, we will, since phase 1.2 has extended, we are needing to extend that site if possible.
Okay, good. Is Ben Perry still on the line with Monica?
I think I saw him jump off as well. Jerry, I'm sorry.
Okay, I was just curious. They have not. I haven't seen anything. Maybe Christine has anything where they're talking about the early workshopping on the business building complex that will eventually go along Dolorosa Street and cover the area where the jail was. So if they're not as far along as they think they are not, as I think they are not, if that makes any sense, it's going to be a while. So that space is going to be available for whoever needs it for some time. That's just my feeling on it. But they'll tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. Okay, everyone. Well, that concludes our presentations and our subcommittee meeting. So do I have a motion and a second from subcommittee members to adjourn?
So
All right. And a second? Second. Miss Kathy, thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye. We'll see you next month.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.